friends, thank you so much for clicking this video. My name is Heather Chasina and you are welcome. So I hope you enjoyed the trailer that I created for this particular video. So this is actually part 2 of my immigration story. If you haven't watched the first video, I'll go ahead and link it for you so that you can watch it and get a bit of a background. So in this particular video, I will be talking about culture shock. And I'll try to be as candid as possible in this video, only because I've noticed that people who immigrate or relocate to other countries are not as forthcoming about how difficult it can be to relocate and adjust to a whole new system and way of life. So I'll try to be as candid as possible. Another thing that I wanted to mention is the first 2 years of me living in the United States, I actually actively tried to go back to Kenya. That's how big the adjustment was. And in addition to that, I wanted to let you know that this is just my personal story. It does not mean that everyone else has gone through the same exact thing. So take it with a grain of salt or a pinch of salt. And let's begin. Get yourself a cup of tea. If you know somebody else who is probably thinking of relocating or immigrating somewhere, just go ahead and share this video. I think they'll learn a lot from my story. Okay, I hope you're ready. Let's begin. Okay, so getting on the plane. I think I mentioned in my other video that I had never ever been out of the country. I'd never been to Uganda or Tanzania. I was just a Kenyan girl. So getting on a plane was something that my parents were really scared about. They were afraid that I would get lost. So what did they do? They put the fear of God in me. They really scared me. And I guess their motive was just to make me really aware when I was in the airport, and also to be really responsible with my documents. Because if you get a green card, you get a sealed envelope where you're not allowed to open the contents until you enter your port of entry. So my parents really scared me. I remember my dad telling me of his experience of studying abroad, and he told me that he did get conned 10 pounds. So he really made me really scared. And honestly, I held onto my documents the whole entire way. I had booked a Kenya Airways flight, but you know, with Kenya Airways and KLM, there's kind of like a contract going on. So of course they put me on the KLM flight, which I did not want because I wanted to be with familiar people throughout my journey. So on the KLM flight, what did they do? They actually served us seafood the whole entire way. And I tried to look for substitutions, and there was nothing like I really could eat that was filling. So I was just snacking along the way. So paired with my paranoia and limited eating, you can imagine my state of mind. I was not okay. I was constantly looking at my documents. Even when I was going to the bathrooms, I was holding on to my documents. I was afraid of falling asleep. Like, it was really hectic. And the flight was really, really long because I was to go to Amsterdam, and there was a layover there, and then go to Detroit, Michigan, Charlotte, North Carolina, and then rural Virginia. So it was a long trip. The only highlight is I was leaving on my birthday. I did not pick, you know, this particular date. It's the airlines that said that, you know, this is the only date that you can leave. I think so many people were traveling on that particular day. So I was traveling on my birthday. So I felt as if it was kind of like prophetic that I'm starting a brand new, or birthing a new way of life, kind of. Yeah, so that's how I saw it. So it was really exciting to know that I was leaving Kenya one age. I was losing time. I think actually that it felt like the longest birthday of my life because of the time difference. Losing time, gaining time. So I just found that to be really interesting. But in short, what I just wanted to let you know is I did not sleep. There was a lot of paranoia, but finally I did arrive rural Virginia. Okay, so once I arrived rural Virginia, my sister picked me up. She had actually arrived or relocated to America, I think 1 year prior on a student visa. So it was really nice to have her pick me up from the airport. And then in addition to that, my brother was to join us, I think 2 weeks later. So I felt really good knowing that I had siblings around me and I felt safer once I landed. Now, once I arrived rural Virginia, what I noticed is that it was really small. And, coming from Nairobi and, getting on a plane to go to the United States, you feel as if every city that you go to is going to be like really ginormous. But honestly, sometimes I felt as if, man, was this a downgrade? Because it was a really, really small rural town. My first impressions obviously was the street lighting was fairly good. For a rural town anyway, it was fairly good. In addition to that, obviously, the steering wheel was on the left, and then also the driving was on the right side of the road. So it was opposite of what I was used to. And honestly, I felt nauseous on the way home. Extremely, extremely nauseous. And I just felt as if we were going to crash. So once we got home, it was really, really late. Once we got home, we slept and we woke up in the morning. And once we woke up, of course, what every Kenyan does, what do they do is we fix a cup of tea. So I went to the refrigerator and got some milk and I proceeded to make some tea. I had also come with a suitcase filled with like Kenyan food and stuff. So I was like, yeah, let me make myself a cup of ketepa. And once I reached over to the milk, I tasted it and it tasted spoiled. So I wanted to pour it out and my sister was like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, the milk is spoiled. She was like, no, look at the expiration date. And sure enough, it was not spoiled. And I think that was my first culture shock, was how the food did not taste like Kenyan food. Honestly, with Kenyan food, I think because it's really organic and it's like, I don't know, the farming system in Kenya is completely different from here. So I felt, as a Kalenjin girl who loves milk, that was my first culture shock. And so I can't take milk at this point. It tasted spoiled. I can't even explain. So yeah, so that was my first experience of, wow, I'm already starting to feel that distance of you're not at home, right? So after that, I think it was lunchtime and my sister was like, let me show you the town and let's try to get food from a fast food place. So in my head, I was just thinking of these burgers that you see online. And this was around 2007, so fast food was not big in Kenya. There were no international fast food restaurants like KFC and what have you that's currently in Kenya. So at that time I was like, yeah, I want a juicy burger and chips, but over here they call it French fries. So we were driving around and I saw this huge billboard that said Hardee's, and there was this really juicy burger and I was like, yes, that's where we're going. So my sister and I went there. What I noticed is we ordered a tall Coke and they just gave us an empty cup, and I asked my sister, are we being scammed or what's going on? And then she said, oh yeah, this is actually the way they do it here. It's self-service and bottomless drinks. So of course I was like, okay, that's strange. And then also the fact that everyone puts ice in their drinks. It's a big thing. It's an American thing. Even during the dead of winter, people do put a lot of ice in their drinks. So anyway, they asked me, what kind of burger that I want, and I was like, put all the toppings, jalapeno, cheese, and all this stuff. I just wanted a monstrous burger. So that's what I got, and the portion size was so huge. I was used to, like, the really teeny tiny burgers that they had in Kenya, but this one was like huge, really, really big. And I didn't even finish the burger. Okay, so once I got home, I got so sick. I was actually vomiting a lot. And that's when I decided, you know what, I'm just going to ease myself into the American food. And I actually continued to eat off of the food that I brought in my suitcase, the Kenyan food. And yeah, that was my experience with, American food. And I think it's because I was used to just eating farm to table because my parents were farmers, and also were used to eating traditional foods. As I said before, the ugalis and ugali ya wimbi, mursik, and all those foods. So my stomach wasn't used to GMO foods, and that was a shock. So honestly, if you're in Kenya right now, please just know that you're eating the best of the best. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I could order some food from a restaurant in Kenya or from some kibanda and get it delivered here. Yeah, so that was my experience. Another first impression was the fact that it was so cold. I think when I landed, I felt as if my nose was running or nose bleeding, and I told my sister, oh, I feel as if there's something wrong with my nose. And she told me, oh, it's just a cold, it's winter, you'll get used to it. And that was my first experience of understanding that East Coast winters are brutal, okay? They're really, really brutal. And aside from that, I think that was my initial first impressions. Of course, another one is the fact that coming from Kenya, you're in a homogeneous society. Everyone looks like you, everyone sounds like you. And then coming to, going to a rural town in Virginia, it looks kind of different. Now, all of a sudden, like in the snap of a finger, I was a minority. And then I became the girl with the accent. And every time you talk, everyone turns, oh, where are you from? So that was like really, really different, coming from a place where it didn't even occur to me. Like, I wouldn't sit down saying, oh, I'm black. Like I lived my whole life just not being aware of the color of my skin, but going to rural Virginia and becoming a minority, that's when you realize, oh, okay, I'm black. Yeah, so that was really, really different. And I think that's it for my first impressions about America. Okay, so my next culture shock was in regards to school. I went to Strathmore University for 1 year. And Strathmore University was, this business school. You had to really dress professionally. And coming to the United States, the first thing that I noticed is, I think my first day of class, I've dressed up, I've combed my hair, I look really presentable because, I came from a really, really good business school in Kenya. So coming to this school, it was a Christian school. And the first time in class, I noticed everyone was in pajamas and it looks like they practically rolled out of bed. And I was in disbelief. Like, I don't think I understood anything in my first class because I was looking around and I was like, is this a joke? Like, everyone just had, their bed hair and their cup of tea, coffee. That's a big thing, cup of coffee in one hand, pajamas, and everyone just looked so sleepy. So that was like a big culture shock, at least to me. And then also they were referring to their teachers with their first name. And in Kenya, you're like, oh, Mr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so. Like, to me, that was like really scary, the way people were so laid back. So it took a bit of time before I kind of loosened up, because I was like, what are you guys doing? Another thing that I don't know if I mentioned, but my parents actually asked us to go to this Christian university. My sister was already there. My brother this time had already joined. And the reason why they picked a Christian university is because we had some family members who were already there. One of them was actually another childhood best friend that I've had. So that was really, really nice to have familiar faces there. And another reason why they chose a Christian university is because they had horror stories about kids coming to America and basically just wasting their lives. So I remember my dad saying, oh, niliambiwa watoto wakikuja huko wanavuta bangi, wanapotea. So yeah, so my dad was he was like, let's play it safe and you guys go to a Christian university. Another thing is that all my credits actually transferred, and I think if you know someone who's thinking of relocating to another, country, ask them if their school is accredited, because Strathmore is accredited and internationally recognized. So it was really easy for me to transfer my credits. And I think I had done only 1 year of Strathmore, but once I transferred my credits, I became a junior. So I went from first year to third year like that. So that was really exciting. Another thing is my GPA went from, I don't even know how much it was in Strathmore, but when I transferred my credits, of course, all my credits transferred as pass, so they didn't give me a letter grade or anything. So my first semester of being in this university, my GPA shot up to a 4.0, and I was invited to a sorority, but because I was working so much, I was unable to accept the invite. But yeah, my GPA did shoot up. But to be honest, guys, coming from the 844 system, I noticed that I was actually regurgitating information. I was cramming. So honestly, I think that I realized that that wasn't a sustainable way of learning, especially because one of the classes that I did was a finance class that was about simulation. So it was really like hardcore application and, practical stuff. And in the 844 system, it was more theoretical than anything. So I just remember that I really struggled in that class, guys. I really, really struggled. And then I made a vow, thank God I passed the class, but I made a vow after that, you know what, cramming and me were done. And I think I kept that promise all the way through my master's. Yes, so that was really something. Another thing is the importance of computer packages. If you are in Kenya, once you finish high school, every parent pushes you to go ahead and do some computer packages. Well, I did computer packages, and I think it's ICDL, International Computer Driver's License, yeah. So when I did my advanced computer classes in my major, I just remember I was really, really good. I think I scored 100 in absolutely everything. And one of my teachers actually said, I think you need to switch your major to IT because you're doing so well. And I was like, don't worry, it's just the computer packages that I did in Kenya. So I explained it to her and she was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But that was something that I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that those things would come in handy, but they truly were. Okay, so as far as housing, this is where things go south so fast. Whew, so okay, so where do I start? So I grew up very sheltered and naive. So I remember when we arrived the United States, my sister had secured a house that she was renting, and it was one of these picture perfect homes that have white picket fences, really, really lovely. And I was sharing a room with her and my brother was in the other room. So it was such a pretty, pretty home. And after a few months, I was like, you know what? I want to be Miss Independent. Wrong move. So I wanted to be Miss Independent. So what did I do? I decided that I want to move out and get my own bedroom. And one Kenyan lady called me up, and it was such a small town. It's like everyone knew everyone. Like you knew every Kenyan who was there. You knew every international student, be it Indian or Nepalese, like we knew each other. So one lady called me and said, hey, I hear that you're looking for a home. I have this home and an extra bedroom, so I would like to invite you. And yeah, so I went and I looked at the house. It was during the day and I really liked it. It was a, you know, small bedroom, but I was like, you know what, this is perfect. And I decided to move out. So I did. And once I did, my childhood best friend called me up and was like, hey, I heard that you moved. Where did you go? You know, she was just curious. And then I told her the address, and then she tells me, you know, that's the ghetto, right? Guys, I had moved to the wrong part of town. I didn't even know, because I had gone there during the day, and you know, during the day there's not too much activity. So I remember my first night there were gunshots. Guys, I think after a week I was used to it. I could sleep through them. Like, I was so used to it. And I think because of my ignorance and just the way I was so naive, I got some supernatural protection, because I never got into any problems. No one ever disturbed me. Like, I was just in and out. I was, oh gosh, I think God just divinely protected me because of my stupidity, honestly. So after that, I think I stayed there for a couple of months. And then after that, one of my other friends calls me and she says, hey, I know that you're in a very small bedroom, and I'm actually moving out of state, and I want you to take over my lease. And this bedroom is, I don't know how many square footage she told me. And I was like, wow, that's like basically triple the bedroom that I was in. So I said, okay, guys, I made another mistake. I didn't even go and view this particular house. I just took my friend's word for it, and I said, okay, I'll go. And she told me of a Nigerian and a Nepalese international student, a lady. So I was like, oh, if they're gonna be my roommates, well and good, because there was just this international connection where you just felt really united, and all the international kids were like as thick as thieves, right? So I was like, oh, that's good. So I signed myself over into this lease. I took over her lease, and when I went to see the house, guys, if there was a way that someone could go from bad to worse, that's what happened. This neighborhood was even more sketchier. People there, from what I hear, were more violent, and the gunshots were more often. So at night, it was, gosh, it sounded like fireworks at night. Guys, it was just an awful experience. And not only that, guys, guess what happened? There were roaches. There were cockroaches in the kitchen. So this place was just, oh my goodness, it was just something else. But I just grew to love it. Thank God there were no cockroaches. There were no cockroaches in the in the bedrooms. So my bedroom, in as much as it was big, I enjoyed it. But guys, I don't know why I did that. So again, my childhood best friend calls me and tells me, oh, I heard that you've moved, and she was expecting to hear that I've moved to a better place. And I tell her, and then she's like, what are you thinking? Like, I don't even know what I was doing. And I was like, I mean, I don't know what I'm doing, honestly. And at that time, my siblings had upgraded their home, so they moved from a 2-bedroom to like a huge, like, I don't know if it was like a 4-bedroom home with a basement. And I was so embarrassed, guys. My ego was so big. I was like, guys, I can't ask them to move back, because they already got, I think, other roommates as well. So I was like, I can't ask them to move back. I'm just going to roll with the punches. This is what I picked up because of my naivety and yeah, just being silly. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna roll with the punches. Now, if there was a benefit out of my whole housing experience, or my whole initial housing experience, was the fact that the gas was cheap. the gas was really cheap because of where I was. But in all honesty, I just learned from my mistakes and I moved from there. So let's talk about career. So my career story starts when I arrived, obviously, and of course I didn't have anything on my resume. At the age of 19 or 20, coming from Kenya, it's very hard that you find someone who has something substantial on their resume. For me, I just had my volunteer work experience. So the only option for me to get a job was to work in a warehouse. And you know, this was a very rural town, so there were not too many opportunities. So everyone was telling me, just work in a warehouse and then get something on paper, and then that will open doors for you. So guys, my warehouse experience was really hard. I mean, guys, I worked so hard. I think we only got 2 15-minute breaks, and I think the shifts were like, I don't know if it was 12-hour shifts or 14-hour shifts. I don't even know. But guys, it was so hard to be on my feet for so long, and it was just, you know, repetitive tasks, you know, looking at this, putting it here, looking at this, putting it here. And I think my job title was sorter, so I was sorting out stuff, and guys, it was really difficult. In addition to that, I didn't have a car, so so transportation was a pain because I would rely on colleagues to pick me up, and if they didn't, I had to take the bus, which, being in a rural town, there was not like, oh, you get onto a matatu and in 5 minutes you're in your destination, or 30 minutes. No, it was such a long commute. So after that, I think I was a month or two in, I quit. I actually resigned because I was like, I can't do it. This is so far away from home. And I think I just got drained, physically drained. And from there, I was like, I don't want any manual labor. I don't want to work as a nurse aide. I don't want to do anything else. I was like, let me just look for something else that at least will engage me intellectually, because I really craved to like get soft skills and other skills that I can maybe apply once I graduate with my finance degree. So after that, I started at, and I think I'll just say the name, J. Crew. So I was doing sales and customer support. So it was a call center type job. And with J. Crew, that was quite an experience because, first of all, J. Crew, at that time, I know nowadays they have made it really, really affordable, but back in the day, it was really, really expensive. I think their coats would go for like upwards of $500 per coat. Everything was really expensive. The necklaces would go for easy like $500. So it was like like for me, of course, I was working a call center type job, so I was not making a lot of money, but I was handling orders like $5,000 or $10,000 orders. People would call. I know a lot of our customers would call from New York, and they had like summer homes all over the United States. So they would call and say, oh, I'm going on vacation, so I want this to be ready in my vacation house by the time I get there. And I would be like, oh, okay. Yeah, so it was really interesting. Another thing is that I was so used to like, you know, primary and secondary colors. But now working in this company that was selling high-end clothes, I came to discover that, oh, there's teal, there's turquoise, there is eggplant, heather purple, and all this stuff. And I was like, why can't they just stick to these other colors, you know? So talking on the phone with people, like it really made me learn how to be very descriptive, because you had to really describe how this garment looks like and walk through someone with their shopping experience. So you really had to describe, oh, it's kind of like an eggshell color with this texture and stuff. So yeah, it was really interesting. It was really, really interesting. And I think at this time, Michelle Obama, I think, had started wearing J. Crew stuff, so we started getting a lot of orders. One thing that I noticed is that I really struggled initially to connect with customers. because first of all, my tempo of speaking, my speed of speaking was like really slow. I was like, hello, thank you for calling. I was really timid, shy, introverted. So engaging with customers was really, really difficult. So my supervisor, I remember she was like this Italian American mama bear, and she really took me in and she was like, you know, you kind of need to polish on this and that. And she really like took me in and really, you know, spruced me up and really taught me the ins and outs of like phone etiquette, and also working on my tone, because I was really flat when I used to speak. But in no time, I was that girl that everyone wants to be on the phone. So I think during the holidays, we had kind of like a jingle that would say like, happy holidays, thank you for calling J. Crew. So for me, I used to be very flat and monotone and would be like, happy holidays, thank you for calling J. And my tone was really like low. But in no time with my training, I was like, happy holidays, thank you for calling J. Crew, my name is Heather, how are you? And I would engage in small talk and stuff. So, I mean, I know some people despise like, you know, humble beginnings and stuff, but for me, honestly, this job, in as much as it wasn't paying that much, I mean, I was in college, I feel as if this was really, really instrumental in like my career. Yeah, so after that, I think I went from one call center job to the next, one call center job to the next. And this was such a small town that I exhausted all my options. But J. Crew was always that job that I was doing a few hours here and a few hours there. Like, it really stuck with me because another thing is, gosh, this sounds like an advertisement. But another thing that I liked about them is the fact that they had this whole sustainability thing going on, where they would source their clothes in, I guess they would go to their warehouses and make sure that these clothes are not coming from sweatshops. So I think they were one of the pioneers when it came to like sustainability. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say. That was my experience. Okay, so I want to talk about my move to DC and the culture shock that came with it. So I remember that I did get an invite for a family fun day or cookout for Kenyans here in DC, because it's a huge population of Kenyans here. So I got on a bus, guys. The bus took forever. I think it took 12 days. Not 12 days, 12 hours. 12 hours to arrive here in the DC area from rural Virginia. And as I'm talking, I'm just noticing that the light is coming in and out. I have a small lamp helping me, but yeah, this natural light is going in and out, so just disregard that. So I did arrive after 12 hours, the DC area, and one thing that I noticed right off the bat is the fact that it was a big town, obviously. When people say DC, it's actually kind of misleading, because DC means that someone could be Northern Virginia, Maryland, or DC. So together it's DC metro area. So someone could say that they're in DC, but maybe they're not Northern Virginia, and it's tri-state area. Literally, you won't even know when you're crossing state lines. So they just call it DC. So anyway, when I arrived, I just noticed that the highways were really big. In rural Virginia, I think our largest highway was just a two-car road, two lanes on this side and 2 lanes on the other side. But here it was 6, 7, 8 lanes. Another thing that I noticed is the fact that it is such a cosmopolitan town. I think, in fact, most of the towns in the DC metro area have, I think they're on the 1, 2, 3 list, or like top 10 lists. They dominate the top 10 list of the most diverse towns in or cities in America. So it's really, really, really diverse. So I noticed that when you're driving around, you'll see a church that says Korean church, or a Chinese church. You might notice an Orthodox Russian church. Really, really diverse. Another thing that you notice is lots of international markets. Yeah, to me that really caught my eye because I was just coming from a predominantly white town and then coming to a place where I'm no longer a minority. Everyone is just really different. You could be walking down the street and then you notice someone speaking a different language. Lots of Africans as well. So when we went to this particular cookout, I noticed that the Kenyans there were really doing well for themselves. And I was like, you know what? I would love to move here. I noticed that, they had this family thing going on. And in rural Virginia, it was just like a college town where I was. So there was not this aspect of family per se that we were used to, exposed to. Like everyone was like a struggling college kid. Those were all my friends. So coming here where you see people like they're really settled and adjusted to life in America, I was like, man, I would like this. I would like this. I think this is a place for me. So I experienced DC for a couple of days and then went back to Virginia. I said, you know what? I want to move to DC. I think I'm done with this rural town. And honestly, I think if you were born and raised in that particular rural town, I think you would find it much easier. But for someone who was adjusting, that wasn't the place for me. In as much as I had made lots of friends there at this point, but my heart wasn't there anymore. So I applied for a job to an interview. I think I applied to interview for a particular job and I got it, and it was actually in the healthcare field. So you can imagine I was doing finance in school, but I applied for a healthcare job and I got it. And I think that's another power that I noticed with living in the United States, is the fact that you can change your major in the drop of a hat. So I got the position in a healthcare field, and then I moved here. And when I moved here, like there was more culture shock because in the DC area, because it's kind of like the nerve center for economic stuff. So there are a lot of governmental jobs, political jobs, and nonprofits. So most of the time, people's salaries, especially the executives, their salaries are public knowledge. With nonprofits, taxes, and then they will actually print out the CEO or the CFO, like their salaries. So for me, I got to see like a couple of, people and what they were making. And I was like, whoa, I could not believe the amount of zeros that were behind it. Another thing that I noticed is the fact that most of my vice presidents and presidents and the CEOs of all the companies that I was in, they used to bike to work. So that was really different because for me, I would insist in driving to work, but they would bike to work. And then when you're in the elevator, they're there with, their biker shorts and their bikes. And honestly, you couldn't really tell who is the employee and who is the employer, because there was just this really relationship. In Kenya, sometimes I feel as if someone has money, they'll make it known like, yeah, I have money. But over here, you would never know. It's usually the people who dress the simplest, or the people who are living just a normal like life. And then once you really find out what they're about, you're like, whoa. Another thing is that I got to at least experience during Christmas time, like being invited to dinners and stuff, like black tie events. And for me, I was like, you have no idea, I was so intimidated because, guys, I was just in my head, I used to see myself as just like this 20-something-year-old kid from Kenya who's just trying to adjust. So going to these events, you would meet people who really engage you intellectually. Yes, there's a lot of small talk, but for the most part here in DC, you can get intimidated with how intelligent people are. And then during these events, the first thing people ask, oh, where do you work? And then, okay, and then if they know, they start probing and probing. So over here, it's like, you would make the worst mistake to burn bridges here in DC because everyone is interconnected. It just takes a phone call for someone to find out what kind of employee you were or are. So that was something else, like everyone is connected in one shape or fashion. Another thing is the power of networking. There's lots of opportunities to network, and honestly, that's how people here advance in their careers, is networking. So to me, moving to DC was one of the best experiences because it really transformed me to become a really, really confident person. Okay, so as far as lessons, I'm just going to read something that I wrote down because, yeah, I don't want to take so much time. So the first one is a quote from someone who's really nice. It says, "Tough times don't last, only tough people do."
Tough time never lasts. Only tough people last.
Okay, but jokes aside, I went through so many tough times. I know that it's kind of like my past life.
Past life. Yo. Past life. Whoa.
But when I was going through it, it was really, really difficult, guys. Really, really difficult. I mean, there were more lows that, there was no time for me to actually go through. But honestly, it was really, really tough. Psychologically, emotionally, physically, everything about adjusting was really tough. Another thing is, I noticed that in the beginning, there was a fear that I had being an immigrant, because in as much as you may have supportive parents, if they're not physically there, you feel as if you're one slip up away from losing it all. And it was just this really big fear that I had initially until I told myself to snap out of it, because like, you can't do anything with fear. You can't really move with fear. And I think that's something that I told myself, you know what? If all this goes away, that's fine. I'll pack my bags and go to Kenya. But you know what? I'm not going to say that I'm not going to try because of the fear of doing something. So that's something that I wanted to mention. Another thing is, trust the process and don't despise your humble beginnings. And this is because working in J. Crew and all these call center type jobs that I was telling you about, it was really instrumental when I moved to DC, because in all my jobs, everyone noticed that I had this level of professionalism. And I think also that has to do with being in Strathmore Business School, but they just noticed that I had this level of just professionalism, like phone etiquette. Even if I was calling like, a colleague, it was just very, 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 very professional. So don't take that for granted. Like, I feel as if, and this is my next point, everything works to your good. So everything is building you up for your ultimate purpose and destiny. So for me, like, that's just something that's really stuck with me. It's like everything happens for a reason. Another thing, obviously, is I've learned to research about housing. After my failed housing experiences, I've just learned that, hey, I need to research before I move somewhere. So nowadays, it takes me days of researching before I say yes to something. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is don't rush life. And I remember when I started off, I told you that I used to do call center type jobs when I was in college. And I remember that a lot of my friends or peers were entering like nursing type jobs, which were paying significantly more. And honestly, I felt like maybe I need to just switch my major and do what they're doing. But I just felt, I don't even know how to explain it, but you know how you know in your knower, as they say, like you just have this gut feeling like, no, I need to stick with this. Well, that actually really helped me, because with me not rushing life and actually just doing what I felt as if was right at that time, it just enabled me to be more comfortable with my journey. And looking back, everything makes sense now. Another thing is take chances. Moving to DC was a risk, but you know what? It was the best decision to date. It was my best decision to date. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. yeah, I try to make it a bit different from how other people usually do it, so that you can understand like a wraparound idea of all the culture shock. So if you have any questions, or if you know someone who is probably relocating to the United States, feel free to let me know. I don't have a problem with chatting and advising you guys in any shape or form. And that's it. Thank you so much for tuning into this video, and I will see you on the next one.